Hey there, it's Robin, and you're listening to Healthy Habits for a Healthier Home. I'm here to help you create a healthier life, one simple shift at a time. If you're a mama ready to ditch toxins, clean up your family's nutrition, and build daily habits that support your well-being, you're definitely in the right place. Each episode is packed not only with education, but practical tips and tools to help you transform your health and your home without that feeling of overwhelm. So let's take this journey together to create a thriving, low-tox home for you and your family. If you're ready, say, I am ready. Now let's get into this episode. Hey y'all, welcome back. I'm super excited today. I have on Britt Michaelian, and we were just kind of talking a little bit before, and I said we better hurry up and get started because all of this stuff is so juicy and good. So welcome to the show. I'm so excited that you're here. For those of you who might not know who Britt is, she's a soulful guide in the healing art space. She blends a lot of different modalities, which I'm super excited to learn about, but creativity, energy work, and inner transformation. And as the audience of this podcast, we know that we do a lot of healing from the inside out. And I really feel like Britt is going to add some of those tangible takeaways for us today to be able to implement some of those as our 1% shifts for this week. So welcome. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. This is going to be great.
Absolutely. So you do have quite a plethora of modalities. You are a family and marriage therapist. You are, you also do art therapy. You've been in the hospital setting. You're now kind of in the, what I consider more quantum and like meditation side of things. So I would love to know through that whole entire journey, how you ended up here.
Yeah, thank you. So I am not a licensed marriage and family therapist.
Okay.
This is a really good topic because the reason that I didn't get my license, I was working in the hospital setting in oncology, pediatric, and heart transplant unit. I was actually pregnant at the time with my second daughter. And by the time that I had my second daughter, the cost for me to get my license, I was basically going to have to work for free and pay somebody $20 an hour, which now is cheap for childcare.
Right.
Yeah. And I was like, I can't afford to pay basically $60,000 to somebody to take care of my kids so that I can get licensed. So I kind of went off on a different tangent. So at the time, I got my master's degrees in art therapy and marriage and family therapy. And I thought I was just going to hang up my shingle and that was what I was going to do. And I ended up starting to be a mommy blogger. And I was focusing mostly on child safety. And at the same time, my artwork was in galleries across the United States. I had an amazing agent who did a really good job getting my artwork in galleries in New York and Chicago and LA and San Francisco. And it was amazing. This was like the beginning of kind of like the whole influencer thing. It was the very beginning. And moms.
So you're the OG blogger.
Yes. Yeah. Moms were like the epicenter of what every brand wanted. And so I kept getting pulled in different directions, way far away from my art, way far away from kind of helping people, which is what I wanted to do. And I kind of went off on a little bit of a tangent and went in that mommy blogger, because I had lots of cool events that people were taking me to or inviting me to. And then in 2010, my mom was diagnosed with lung cancer. And so that kind of, we moved from San Francisco to Southern California to be near my parents. And I stopped everything. I stopped painting. The only thing that I could do was doing digital consulting. And so I still was doing a little bit of the influencer stuff. I did red carpet stuff for Entertainment Tonight as their social media correspondent, which I don't even know if they have anymore. So that was kind of fun. And then when my mom passed away in 2012, and then in 2017, my sister was diagnosed with cancer, and in between my dad had cancer. So I was like in heavy caregiving mode with 3 little kids and taking care of my parents and whatnot. And so I became a Reiki master and studied EFT tapping, Akashic records. I mean, anything I could get my hands on that was about healing, I was very interested in. And I became very interested in Dolores Cannon as well. So I learned about quantum healing hypnosis technique. And then Candace Goldman, who is she was her student, but she was also somebody that Dolores worked with. And she came up with something called BQH, which Dolores's protocol is very strict. You have to follow everything that she wanted you to do. And Candace created a modality that allows you to incorporate things like Reiki and other healing modalities. So that really applied more to what I wanted to do. So I've kind of gone into that. But when my sister was diagnosed with cancer in 2017, and I had become a Reiki master and I hadn't been painting, and all my artwork I had called back from the galleries, I realized that I could infuse the artwork that I was creating because she got me paint by number. So I started painting again when I was taking care of her. And I had this kind of download. I had just Reiki'd her back, and she had a tumor in her rib in the back, and it was very painful. And so when I would Reiki it, she would calm down, and then she could sleep. And then I would go downstairs, and she got me the paint by number. So I started painting, and I just had this kind of divine download that I could infuse Reiki healing into the artwork so that it could transmit healing when I wasn't there. And so
I love that.
yeah, so then I started painting again. My sister passed in 2021, and it's just been a journey ever since then. But I work with clients, I do channeling, I do all kinds of things, but really, it's really about learning to tune into your intuition and just listening to God, praying, and just for me, it's really every time I start to paint, I say a prayer to God, please send healing energy through me into this artwork so that it radiates out to whoever needs it.
I
And
love that.
that's just the work that I'm doing now. So yeah.
Well, that seems like a journey of a lot of ups, downs, and all arounds. I'm sorry about your parents and your sister. It's not a fun thing to be a caregiver, but it's also really hard when your loved one is suffering and you have to also be a mom and show up for yourself. And we're pulled in 100 different directions when we step into that role. And so if nobody else ever told you this, that's amazing. Obviously, God put you there because you could handle it. And I'm sure that your parents and your sister were super grateful to have you in their life during that time, as well as your entire life. But I think we forget to reflect on that journey and experience that we go through when we are caregivers, no matter what age you are, whether you have smalls, bigs, it doesn't make a difference, but you are pulled from your family and you have to really tune in to find the balance to have the time for it all. Right.
Yes.
And so without becoming overwhelmed and just completely physically shutting down, which I really believe that some of those modalities that you now are in and working, in for other people and helping them is just doing that. It's opening them up for greater energy. It's opening them up to be able to expand, because I feel like when we get in chaotic, stressful situations, our internal being just crushes. It just closes in and we're not expansive anymore. And so I would love to talk about, because some of the healing modalities you mentioned, I've never even heard of, some I have, but I would just like to dip into one or two of them that you feel like, as a mom in the trenches of taking care of your kids, trying not to lose who you are, possibly going through midlife changes into the caregiving space with elderly parents, if that's where you're at. What are a couple of the different modalities if someone is looking to do some inner work that for a beginner wouldn't overwhelm them?
Yeah, one thing that I didn't mention is that I've been a yoga practitioner for sorry, my cat's here. She likes to say hi. You can't really hear it. But yoga for me, I think for any beginner, and it's, people think of yoga as exercise, but yoga is more of a work in than a work out. The more that you do it, the more you understand that. So in the beginning, you're really just trying to get your body into the poses. But the reason that you get into these poses and the reason why they're so beneficial is because you leave your thoughts at the door and you're there and you're present and you're focusing on your breath and you're focusing on really trying to get your body into these poses that allow the energy to flow through your body in an unblocked way, in a very balanced way. And so if you do have blocks, you sort of breathe through them. And so it's a very easy healing modality. And I think it's so important for moms, especially busy moms who are running around. If you can sneak away, even if it's just doing something that's like a YouTube video where you're following along with somebody for 10 minutes, to just do like a very easy, simple flow. It's 10 minutes where you're giving yourself that time. And, whether you're taking care of parents that are aging or you're taking care of little ones, or, even if you've got one on the way, prenatal yoga is super important too. So I think yoga is one of the easiest places to start. And then from there, obviously breath work is hugely important as well, which is a part of yoga. But breath work is, now we're discovering, and I think it's actually an ancient practice. We don't even think about breathing, it's like we just do it. It's like your heart beats and you breathe and you don't really think about it. But when you consciously breathe, there's the sympathetic nervous system, which is when, we're very excited. And then there's the parasympathetic, which allows us to calm down. And so if you can extend your exhales, if you can't get into a class, just focusing on breathing in and then extending your exhales so that they're a little bit longer than the inhales, that can be a hugely beneficial, free, easy way to kind of calm yourself down. And if you can do it throughout the day, I think it's just really powerful way to get yourself in the moment.
Yeah, I 100% agree with both of those things. Over, I would probably say the last, 30, 40 years, I've tried yoga here, tried it there, and I was like, I don't get it. Like, I'm just not resonant. I'm not there, and I would go away from it. I'd come back to it. But during COVID, when we were sort of like at home and I got on Peloton and my brother-in-law was like, oh, it's free for 6 months, just give it a try. And I didn't even have a bike at the time, but I knew it had yoga and it had some other things. So I was like, you know what else do I have to go do? So that was for me a transformative time, because that is really when I started to understand the connection of breath and body.
Yeah.
And the breathing through, like you were saying. And we are breathing all day long, but we are shallow breathing, right? We're just breathing. We're not even physically conscious of the breathing that we're doing because it's autonomic. So when you start to actually be told, as you're bending, whatever, if you're in down dog, whatever, breathe through, whatever. And it's like, it's just a completely different type of breathing. And
Yeah.
once you can understand that connection and how it does release like stress, tension, and all the other things, it is super beneficial. And then, like you said, I always love when people say, I can't afford to go and do X, Y, and Z, because a lot of these places are very individualized. They are expensive. I totally get it. Breathing is free. Box breathing, nose, like you can go on YouTube, watch 3 videos, learn how to do it, and then it's free for you, And so what I love is you can do it sitting in the car on the way to work. If you're in a rushed situation, you don't have time to sit at home and do 20 minutes of quiet time in the morning. I think you should make time for that. But if you can't, there's all these opportunities during the day when we're in our rushed, busy chaos, that if you were to take the time to do those simple things, you wouldn't feel so rushed. You wouldn't feel so overwhelmed, even though we're constantly busy.
Yeah.
So I love those two. I think those are phenomenal. And I think anybody listening today, wherever you are on your journey of healing and health and wellness, and, I just kind of challenge you this week for one of your 1% is try it out, see how it feels. Do it a couple of times and just notice, notice if there's a shift in your body, and notice if there's a calmer, sense when you're finished doing the breathing. And then if not, check out a different breathing technique, because there's 20 million things that you can try that are, it's not just a one size fits all. So I just love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think it's something that, again, we can all benefit from. So talk to me a little bit about, because there's a lot of times I will talk with people and they're hung up on the word meditation. They're hung up on the word, like, I can't sit and be silent, or this is not a biblical practice. And I tend to feel differently about that, but I would love to get your take on that, and how somebody who is, whatever their religion is, but they feel like that might be against it, how would you incorporate? Because I think you can meditate on the word of God. I just would love to get your take on how we can kind of mesh these together without being so black and white.
Yeah. Meditation, the difference between meditation and prayer is that in prayer, you're actively thinking about something, a person, a situation, whatever it is, and you're asking for an outcome, or you want to focus love on that person, whatever it is, you're actively thinking about it. And prayer is beautiful because you are sitting usually in the silence of your mind. So it's a beautiful thing, and you're receiving messages, hopefully from God. And, you know, and meditation is more about allowing the thoughts to go away, allowing, just putting them to the side and just sitting in stillness. And so it's a little bit different because you're not actively seeking something out. Now, there's different forms of meditation too, because there's guided meditation where somebody else is guiding you along. And so when that happens, when you're doing guided meditation, which I lead guided meditations all the time, it's almost like you're watching a movie in your mind. Whereas when you do silent meditation, that's actually way more difficult for people because we're so used to having information input into our brain. So it's almost like people are very uncomfortable just sitting. And so, I just was watching something yesterday where they were talking about how these monks I think it was Greg Braden who was talking about how these monks could sit and they could alter their brain waves. And they're doing it basically because they're sitting in silence. And so they know how to alter their brain waves to either, increase the frequency or decrease the frequency simply by sitting in silence. And so it's really important for us, especially in this busy, busy world, even if you could just do it for 1 minute, to just sit and breathe. And so when you focus on your breath in meditation, it allows your mind to stop the chatter. And every time I always think of it like the sky, the thoughts are the clouds that are kind of moving through, and you're just, yep, there it is. And you just kind of, and it's like yoga. The more you do it, the better you get. But also, the more you do it, the more you see and notice the benefits. And so, especially as a mom, if you can teach your kids how to do this, like, it is so powerful because they won't always be needing to go to the external for stimulation. They'll learn how to just sit. And
Mm-hmm.
in this world, with kids and technology and whatnot, that's a really important thing.
Yeah, I just actually tomorrow I'm releasing a solo episode on going back to school and like three things that we can put in. One of those is grounding. It's like teaching the kids how to ground after a chaotic day or before you go into the chaos, just to set them up a little bit differently. I love what you talked when you talked about the meditation part about there being guided and silent. And I think if you're new to meditation, and again, it is a practice and it was something like, just like yoga for me. Like I tried it, couldn't get it, but when I came into the guided meditations with Kathy Heller, that really like transformed the way that I felt about meditation because she was able to make me like have that story in my mind, but really was able to help me to expand. And then once that kind of happened, then I knew that was kind of my portal in. And then once I got into it, then I'm now able to do some of the silent. It's still, even when you're silent, like you said, the thoughts will float by like a cloud. They will come. That's what our mind does. That's what it's what it's there for. It's been trained to do that, and we shouldn't expect that it's not going to, but it's what do you do with the thought that
Yes.
really counts during that silent time. It's like you just let it float by and maybe you'll address it later and maybe you won't because it'll just kind of keep going and move on and dissipate. So I think again, another 1% shift could be if you've never tried or if you've tried and felt like it wasn't for you, you could always look up some of these, guided meditations or even silent, depending on where you're at on your journey. And I just think give it a try again. And I do believe that teaching our kids earlier on would be a huge benefit because most of us listening are in that midlife range. And could you imagine once you get it, like if you got it when you were, 7, 10, 12, and kids don't know how to kind of decompress. They haven't been taught that. So a lot of times their decompression is through behavior outbursts or melting down or getting quiet or, doing something with a sibling that normally wouldn't happen. So we don't really look at it like that. But I remember when I first learned that, I was like, wow, oh, that totally makes sense.
Yeah. A friend of mine was telling me a long time ago that she and her husband used to start their day with their kids sitting for 5 minutes. When everybody woke up before they got ready for school, they would all sit in the kitchen or the living room or something and just sit in silence and meditate together. And like, what a beautiful way to start the day with your family. If you
Yeah.
start your day connecting, even if it's in silence, because kids want connection. So if you start that way, 2 minutes, whatever it is that you can do, then you can go start the frantic stuff, but the kids will start their day in silence and connection.
Right.
So I
And a
didn't do that.
connection. Right. And connection is huge. I think, especially in this fast-paced world where both parents are working, or, it's just connection has become distant. And I think we need to come back to that as a core value of family. So, speaking about having older children, I know one of the things you and I are definitely going to talk about is like low tox living stuff. But when we're talking about that, when we're talking about these practices, and we haven't taught them at a young age because we just didn't know, and you don't know what you know until you know it, right? And
Yeah.
so, how, in your experience, have you worked through helping adultish children, in that new adulting phase, to want to adopt some of these habits without us pushing it on them or like saying you should try this? Because at that age, they don't want to hear from us, really. Um, you're like, no,
No,
they don't.
no. And if you tell them, then they're really not going to want to do it. It's like,
So creating it without, I guess, the pressure that we feel because we know it might be beneficial for them. What would some of your tips be on that?
well, I think the number one thing is to just do it yourself because your kids are watching
Love
you.
that model.
Yeah. I mean, my husband and I are both yoga practitioners and meditate. And it was interesting because we kind of used to use it as a threat with our kids. Like, if you don't behave when you're teenagers, we're going to take you to India and make you go meditate. Well, guess what my kids had to do when they were my 18-year-old daughter, my husband took her to India. She was being very difficult, or actually, I'm not sure if she was 17 or 18 at the time. This was my middle daughter. And my husband took her to the ashram in India and she had to go do it. But it was actually, she looks back at it as this wonderful experience that she had. So, we were fortunate that we got to do that. And then my youngest daughter was struggling with things that kids struggle with, and, food and eating and that type of thing. And she just was going through a really rough time. And she and my husband went for 5 weeks to India and did breath work and yoga teacher training. So I think leading by example is the most powerful way. And then the other thing is, sometimes if you want to have family movie night, there are some really cool meditation and just kind of healthy living documentaries and things that you can have your kids watch, not as a punishment, but just as a way to do it together. And, maybe you can incentivize them like, okay, we're going to watch this thing. And then afterwards, I have this really special treat. And then you can give them, I don't know, something, a book or a journal or something like that. But I think the key is with all these practices is to lead by example and then make it a community family thing that you do together. So,
Yeah, and that brings me to like the low tox living because, as someone who's been through a journey with, and our children show us a lot, it brings me back to a time when we did things differently, and we still pretty much do a lot of things differently, and that's okay. But for my kids, I had to explain to them that every family does things for themselves in their own way. And so we might eat differently, or we might not have some of these toxic chemical things in our home, but that doesn't mean we're different. It just means we're living in a way that suits us best because you guys have certain things that are triggered by those things. And so we had to help them to come up with a line like, no, I could eat that. I just choose not to because I don't feel good when I do. And, I could do that, but then I'll break out in a rash because of whatever, and it's like empowering. I think the word empowerment is what keeps coming to my mind as I'm talking with you, is empowering the kids to have a voice at a younger age, I think is super important. And I think that my younger daughter's generation is doing that much better than my older, and they're not that far apart. But I just feel like with the whole COVID, not going to school their junior and senior year, and then freshman year of college was weird. I just feel like that really did, and I believe has impacted that generation negatively. And my younger daughter kind of scathed in a little bit, but she's figured it out, and she got those experiences. So it's just been interesting to witness all of that. But I think empowering them to be okay to live the lifestyle that makes sense for them, and maybe it doesn't make sense for your other friends. But even within our dynamic of our family, my kids know because they've grown up a certain way, but they each choose to do their own things because they're 19 and 22. And as a parent, you just have to sort of sit back and let them journey through their journey because that's ultimately what it is. And it's super painful.
Yeah.
It's not
It's always easy to keep your
it's
mouth
not always
shut.
easy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I love that. And I think modeling is definitely great, but I also think showing your kids that there is no perfection, showing your kids that we're all human, and being able to come to a place of my growth where I can say to my kids, this wasn't my best moment. Did not shine the way that I would have liked to, but I'm here to say I'm sorry and I wish I would have done this instead.
Mhm.
But we didn't grow up like that. Like, it was just kind of like, you're the child, you be quiet, you listen, you do what we say. It was like, we don't hear you, and
Yeah.
it was, we grew up in a great family dynamic, you think, because you don't know any different. But
Yeah.
um, yeah, the voice thing was just a non-existent.
Yeah,
Really.
totally. I know it was a generational thing. And it's interesting too, because you're talking about your kids. And I've noticed this too, because I'm 19 and almost 24. And it is there's the COVID almost like split that generation in the
Mhm.
ones who were in school during COVID and the ones who were out of school during COVID. And it was interesting because our middle daughter, she had decided to go to college online before
Mhm.
COVID. And
Okay.
my dad and my husband's mom did not, they were not they did not think that was a good idea. They wanted her to go to the 4-year college experience. And then COVID happened and she was like, I'm already online. Everybody else is online. Then it was okay. So it was just funny to watch how that happened, you know?
Yeah, yeah, totally get it. Because my kids did have virtual prior to COVID. And so it wasn't a huge transition for our family either.
Yeah.
But I do think, depending on, your daughter had a goal and a vision and she was going
Yes.
somewhere artsy, them are different. But
Yeah.
I do think that community piece and being involved. I also I was a teacher. That was my first job. And I have a very different view on education these days, than I did when I was a teacher. And even as a parent, really, if my kids would have been younger when I had the flip of like my mindset, I probably would have done things, but they were so far along already and they didn't want to leave their friend, it was like a whole thing. And
Yeah.
so, um, but education just means something completely different than it used to mean.
Yeah.
So if you don't want to go to a 4-year school, I'm okay with that. I feel
Yeah.
like there's so many different paths to life, and
Oh, yeah.
your kids, your daughter's an example of that. And
Yeah.
before we were talking, before we started recording, she was saying that her kids are in the music industry. And so that's very non-traditional, if you will, but it is a great career. And it's something, that obviously you're very artsy also. So I feel like it's probably just in your whole family,
Yeah.
but I think it's great that you have allowed them to go those paths and figure that out for themselves. So,
Yeah. Thank you. Well, in many ways, I didn't have a choice, but
well, but you still support them through those,
yes.
whether you agree or don't agree,
Yes.
which
Yes.
I think is important. And so if you're a mom of somebody in these like later teen years and trying to help decide, with the pressures of college, if that's right for your child, I just don't want anyone to feel like it's just a one-way street. I just
Mhm.
like people to know that there are choices, and no choice is better than a different choice as long as the human being is making those strides forward. Um,
Yeah, I know. I think it's interesting because our oldest daughter went to traditional college. She graduated actually in 3.5 years. She graduated early because she was supposed to be in her senior year when the pandemic happened. And she was like, I don't want to do this online. And then the middle daughter was online and, going to college. And then she already had a record deal, or publishing deal and all that. So she didn't really need to complete the school. She went like 2.5 years and then she was like, this is just too much and I'm already working. So what am I doing this for? And the youngest one was like, I'm not going to college. So, but she's actually kind of doing her own form of college. So I think it is important to just kind of let the kids, they do know what direction they want to go in. They do know when they're young. Some of them kind of are figuring it out. And then, you have other people who are like, you either have people who know what they want and they just go for it. Like my oldest daughter, she knew what she wanted. She graduated. She had 15 minutes after her last final. She had a job offer. She's in that industry. She's doing that. Me, I got my Bachelor of Fine Arts from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. Then I got 2 master's degrees, and I didn't end up doing those things, for very long before I switched directions. Now, what I'm doing kind of pulls it all together. Now that I'm 51,
well,
so
which
now
is
it makes
exactly,
sense.
but this is my point right here,
Yeah,
is that wherever, and this is what I try to explain to my kids too, and clients that I work with, wherever you started is not anywhere near where you're going to end, but some crazy way it will all pull together.
Yes.
And you do, and only God knows that, right? You just
Yes.
have to continue on the path and keep living true to yourself and being authentic. And I have a friend, and when we turned 40, we were like, okay, well, what are we going to be again when we grow up? And then it was like 45. Well, what are we going to be again? And it's like now we're both in our like early 50s, and we're just like, and again, here we are. It's like, what are we going to be when we grow up again? And I think it's okay. Like, it's okay to transition. It's okay to pivot. I don't think we need to be stuck. And I also feel like even if you get those degrees, right? If you graduate with 40 degrees, that's great. It shows like you can grow up. It shows that you can live on your own. It shows that you can handle things and all of that. And then somewhere down the road, something will spark you again where you might get a certification in something else. You might, and that's also totally fine. So I just think this generation, the generation you and I came from, that really wasn't a thing. Like at the beginning of our generation, it was like it was like my parents were like, you're going to 4-year school, you're getting a job when you get out. And it was just what you did. And
Yes.
then as I kind of grew up, I was like, no, like
Yeah.
that's doesn't have to be for everybody. So again, and I think it applies to women in this midlife age, but it also applies to us helping our children grow up with a different mindset. And the college process, what I will personally say, it is way overrated. It's so stressful for these kids for no reason. You all end up somewhere fine, whether you go to a 2-year school, you get into the 4-year school, you graduate with honors, you don't I mean, nobody knows that in 5 years. And it's hard to tell your child that, but it's more about having faith and trust. Really,
Yeah.
and so that's a whole other thing. But the
Yeah.
amount of stress that these kids are under, I just feel like is really
Which is
where
why
these
meditation.
practices of breath work and meditation and yoga really need to come in to help them see things from a different angle. So I want to touch just a minute like on the quantum manifestation, because that's not something, I don't think people are very familiar with quantum therapy and things like that. So if you don't mind, could you just explain what it is and then maybe give like a simple starting point, kind of like you did for the yoga? Because I think that would be helpful for some who are listening.
Yeah. I mean, so the quantum field is basically what we see and what we've been taught is the five senses, what you see, what you touch, what you feel, all of these types of things. And the quantum field, you don't really necessarily see, touch, and feel with these senses, the quantum field, but it is the energy. We're all energy. There's energy molecules everywhere. And so energy healing is basically quantum field. It's all the same realm. And so in order to, just kind of give a very simple explanation for it, I see it as all of the different forms of energy healing that I've been trained in. And I have so many different that I've read about, that I've been certified in, all of these things. It's all about kind of witnessing in your mind's eye. So when you close your eyes and you visualize things, witnessing in your mind's eye, whatever the outcome is that you want, and seeing it happen. So for instance, when I do,
can we actually stop? Can we do just like a 2-minute, like have everybody, if they're listening and you're not driving and you're in a place where you can do this, but I think it would be really cool just to try it out with Britt while she's here.
Yeah. So just close your eyes and take a deep breath. And then just release any tension, any energy, anything that isn't serving you, known or unknown. Just release that with your exhale. And then just take another couple of breaths, just inhaling and then releasing anything not serving. And the next inhale that you take, fill up your lungs with love, as much love as you can. Think about all the things that you feel that you love, your children, and inhale that in and hold it and feel it. You can put your hands on your heart and then exhale it, sending out that love into the world. And then on your next inhale, pull that love back into your heart. Think about all the things you love. And then exhale again, sending that love out into the world as far as it can go, sending love into all of the beings around you. And then inhale, bringing that love back into your heart again. And then exhale, sending that love out. And the next time that you bring that love back into your heart, just hold it there for a moment and think about something that you have been wanting in your life. And then exhale, releasing the attachment to that thing that you want and trusting that God is going to, in divine timing, bring that to you if it's for your highest good. And then just take a few inhales and exhales, just feeling and trusting and knowing that whatever is meant for you will find its way to you. And then when you're ready, you can open your eyes and just notice a shift.
I love it.
Yeah.
So good. I mean, like just the tension release, but I loved when you said detaching from the thing you want. And I think that's such an important piece to that because when we are wanting something so much and it's not the right timing, we become very focused in on it rather than just putting it out there, letting it go, and then seeing what happens. And I think that's super helpful any age or stage that you're in.
Yeah.
Because we
And
become
sometimes the things that we think we want.
exactly. You're not getting.
Yeah. You're going to get it in a different form. You just have to be able to recognize that. But yeah, I mean, so
Love
what
it.
that practice so you had talked about early on in this show about when you're driving in traffic. So one of the things that I do when I'm driving in traffic, especially if I notice that I'm getting frustrated or irritable or somebody's being a jerk, is I do that inhale into my heart and thinking of something that I love and then pushing it out to all the cars around me. And I swear the cars sometimes just open up and I can drive a little bit more, a little bit
I
faster.
love that.
I don't know what it is, but I just, when you send out that love, it just, all the other things that are like the little mind chatter just kind of fall away and you know that you're doing something good,
Yeah, I
and
love
so
it.
that intention that you set, that is what can make the shifts in the quantum fields. So it's the intention. And I was just talking the other day about this study, and I need to figure out what the study is again, because I know about the study. And it basically is along the lines of there's two boxes and the same thing in each box. And one box has a lid on it and nobody's looking at it. And another box has no lid on it and somebody's looking at that thing. And they can measure whatever the frequency is of each thing. And they can notice that there's a shift in the thing that's been observed. And so that is proof of the shift that can occur in the quantum field because of the observation. So if we're observing in our mind's eye the shift that we want. So for people who have cancer, observing, the shift in their body and the healing and the cells regenerating. Joe Dispenza does some amazing meditations for that. Yeah. And, so just trusting and intention can go for ourselves and it can also work for other people. So when I'm doing healings with people, so with quantum healing hypnosis, what you're doing is you're getting people very relaxed in a space. They give me 10 questions that they want to ask about all aspects of their life, from life purpose to career to relationships, health, all of those things. Why did I, experience this health crisis? Why did this relationship end? Those types of things. What did I, and so when they're in that relaxed state, they can let all the barriers fall away and they can access that information. So you're really tapping into that part of yourself where you're not filtering. And so it's really allowing you to answer your own questions. And then what I do beforehand is I go into a meditation. Before I have the session, I have the person send me their questions. And then I go into kind of a meditative state and I just kind of tap into God, whatever, and receive the answers too. And I just write, it doesn't really come out in specific answers to their questions, but more of like a 2 pages or sometimes 5 pages of just information related to what they asked. And then it's very interesting because when we do the after the hypnosis, when we compare and I read the channeling, I won't read it until afterwards. It always syncs up and validates what came through for them. So if they were doubting the information that was coming through, it provides kind of like a bolster, like, no, actually you do have access to this information and you do have these
super cool.
answers. Yeah, so it's really empowering and it really helps people get connected with their intuition. And I think that's the piece with healing and with being a mom and all of these things. We have mother's intuition, right? But do we
That's right.
have intuition about ourselves? And so that's why meditation is so powerful, because it allows us to strengthen our intuition. Because when we're just sitting, oftentimes things will kind of, that I don't know where it comes from, it's God, whatever it is, it will come through us and we'll hear it and we'll know it. And if we weren't sitting in that stillness, we wouldn't be giving that information a chance to come through. We wouldn't be able to receive it. So
Yeah, I love that. And I last year my word of the year was pause, and that pause really, again, because I did it so often on a daily, so many times throughout the day, I definitely felt a shift in being able to receive those little downloads. And it was definitely new for me, but I think it was perfect timing when I needed it. If you're new to all of this, I know it sounds like, what? How is that possible? Like, how does she get that? And first of all, I think you have a gift for sure. And I don't think everybody can do what you do. So that is something that was a gift from God for you to serve other people. And I think you're using it well. I also think that these modalities are just things that we have not focused on because Western medicine doesn't ever teach us, never taught us. They're never taught this. It's more of the Eastern philosophies. And so I think a healthy balance would be great. If we could learn some of these things, and practitioners and doctors and others can learn and just give resources to people. Not that they have to know everything, but just be taught about it, because they're just not. And then have the Western side for those, things that's necessary for. I think we'd be a better, world and society in itself. So I did want to talk about the non-toxic living, but before
yes.
we do that, I want to at the end, we're going to drop all of Britt's information because, I think following her, getting to know her, looking at her content, signing up to do something with her could be super beneficial for somebody that's needing this particular type of thing in their healing journey, which is pretty much everybody. But if you're ready, like if you're in a space where you're ready to dip into something like this, I would definitely recommend reaching out and having the conversations, because there's plenty of people out there, but connecting and resonating with someone, I think, is also truly important when you're doing this kind of work. So before we end, I do want to touch on the non-toxic. So you went through all of these different modalities, through your life journey, and what brought you to the love of non-toxicness, like the mommy blogging and all that?
Yeah, I don't know really honestly where it started, but I do know that my mom thought I was crazy because I was adamant about my kids having organic baby food. Now, this was, I don't know about you, but I didn't even know that you could make your kids baby food. Like it was,
Right.
you buy them in jars at the grocery store. That's what you do. But I was always, my mom would go get stuff that wasn't organic, and I would be like, no, they're not eating it. My kids are going to be pure. So that kind of started a long time ago. And then I remember, doing a deodorant detox when I found out all the aluminum was causing breast cancer and things like that. And so I taught my kids about that. Now, what's funny is the way that kids rebel, right? So I would find my kids hiding the toxic deodorants in their drawers. And
Right.
so it's you kind of have to just let them figure it out themselves, but you just give them the foundation. And I just learned that I was called a granola mom, and we were an ingredient only household because we didn't have, my husband would get some of the packaged cookies and crackers and things, but I didn't even think to buy them, for the kids when they were going to school, I would get, packaged things because that was just easier for making their lunches and things like that. But for the most part, we were super aware of the foods that our kids were eating, that we were eating, buying organic, buying from farms, going to farmers markets, things like that. No cleaning chemicals. I just think that's just kind of a choice.
I always say, to me, when you're first starting out on that journey, whatever you use every single day,
Yes.
that's the most important thing to start with. And I think, and then as far as body products, I always say head, groin, and armpits, because those are your most absorbent.
Yeah.
And it is hard to transfer. And the kids will have to figure it out. But I will say my youngest figured it out real quick, that wasn't going to work for her. And she's like, but it does this and it does. And I said, okay, well then we'll just try a different one. It's like nowadays there are plenty of safer, better for you, products that we can actually purchase and not have to make ourselves. But
Yeah.
like you with my older one, I was like, everything comes from the baby jar. And it's like, why wouldn't Gerber be good? Like if it's working, it's like, but with my second one, we lived in North Carolina and I had joined a mom's group and they had forums back then because there was no social media. And there was like a green forum. So I was like, let me peek in there. And I was like, these people are nuts. They're like making their own baby food and they're doing all this stuff. And then one day I'm like, get a grip. Like it's really not that hard. You're just blending up stuff. So then for her, because she was our difficult one, it's like I did start making stuff on my own. And it definitely was like so easy and 100% better for her. I think we go on this journey and hit these dips so that we can figure out things and then teach. And then, and I told my daughter the other day, I'm like, when you have kids, obviously you're going to make the choices you're going to make, but I will give you stuff to read because I didn't know this stuff. If had I had known X, Y, and Z, I absolutely would have never done that, but
And they see a lot of stuff on social media that educates them too. Like, I don't know if it's just that they choose it or what, but my youngest daughter is always sending me things and showing me things that I'm like, yeah, all right, I'm glad you're learning. And
that's in her algorithms. That's right. And so it does matter what you look at. So it's like, you got to get their algorithms straight before
but two products that I will say,
yes,
if you're on
perfect.
a low budget, are coconut oil for moisturizer and just for anything. I mean,
everything and anything.
And castor oil are just like two things that on any budget, organic, that those are things that for beauty products, if you just use those for moisturizers and, with castor oil, you can do the castor oil packs. If you've got any type of breast things going on or liver, you want to do liver detox. Those are super powerful, super easy, and very affordable.
I love that. And I think, that's 100%. And I think those are not things that people talk about enough because like coconut oil, I mean, you can use it from oil pulling to everything on your body and it's great. And you can also cook with it. I mean, what more versatile product do you have?
Everything. Yeah.
You could be blathering up while you're cooking. And then, castor oil was something probably of the last 5 years that I kind of came into, but I definitely have seen differences in things as I've tried using it for different things. And my youngest daughter, she had a detox from mold from her dorm. And so there's this whole thing, but she used that as part of her protocol and definitely in 2 months is doing well. So not just from that, but just
and also like lash castor oil.
It's like you can do your eyebrows because it's hair growth and all of that. Yep. So it's great. And I think this younger generation is seeing a lot. The prayer is that they would just see the right things, but also not become so too in depth with everything that there's no flexibility. So I think there's got to be that happy medium of, sometimes when we're out and this is the only option to eat, we just have to make the best choice with what we're given. But at home, we do it our way. Learning to live in a state of balance is important. Well, especially for your kids that are traveling all over the place and they're going to these venues and it's, you got to keep up with a lot, but having basic foundational things I think is important. And if they're using coconut oil and castor oil, they're bringing it with them. They're pretty good. They have a lighter bag, right? What are your two favorite non-toxic or ingredient type foods?
Let's see. Well, I have a almond cow. Have you ever heard of that?
Oh yeah.
Yep. Yeah. I love my almond cow.
I love it.
So I used to make cashew milk every day. And then I found out that there's a lot of mold in the cashews. And so that's not good for you to eat every day. Yep. And so I've been making hemp milk with hemp hearts in there and it's so good and it's really good for you. So I have a matcha every morning. And then I have that with the hemp milk. And I feel like I'd start my day off pretty well. I know for people who don't want to have caffeine, another thing that I drink sometimes, and that for people who want to get off of coffee, especially if you're having hormone issues and things and caffeine isn't working for you anymore, switching to, and you want to have that coffee experience, there's something called Dandy Blend. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's dandelion. It's like a dandelion root coffee, basically. It's brown and it kind of tastes like coffee. I think there's a little bit of chicory in there. It's super detoxifying and it gives you that kind of coffee experience. It's really
I'm definitely going to try that because I was doing mushroom for a little bit, but it's like I can't do something forever. Like I've got to
Yeah.
change it up and
It's good to
just
switch it up.
exactly. So I've had dandelion root before and teas and stuff, but I have never heard of that. So I would definitely will give that a try. Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that.
Yeah.
So today, I mean, geez, we've kind of been all over the place, but you definitely can walk away with a few 1% shifts. But I want you to really think about what this episode means to you and for your healing path. And if you are in a place where maybe you're stuck and you're ready to take a next step, I think nobody can go wrong with doing some energy type practice with all the other things that you're doing. Well, I wanted Britt to talk about her event. She's got two coming up. I'm going to let her take the floor. If you could just tell them where and what's actually going to be happening there, I think some people might be interested in going.
Yeah, thank you. So, Healing House is what I do. And I basically put this event together so that people could understand basically what the energy was behind my frequency art. And so, when people come, we do grounding meditation, we do movement, we do a sound bath. And we do, kind of a community. We do gratitude tea. And, it's really about getting people to come together and understand what energy is and the power that energy has. And so the event that I'm doing August 17th is in San Juan Capistrano at the Ecology Center in the Peace Dome. And so that's August 17th from 2 to 4 p.m. And then on January 26th, 2026, I can't believe we're already going into 2026, I'm going to be doing Healing House at the Lido Theater. And that's going to be a fundraiser for City of Hope, which is Cancer Treatment Center here in California. And it's just a really wonderful, lovely community, a place where people come together and experience love and wellness. And really, they leave with a greater understanding of healing practices and what they're already doing, kind of understanding that they're actually already doing these healing practices and maybe give them some ideas to implement those into their life as they move forward. But the sound bath is really powerful. We get people to really think about the intentions that they're setting and how important that is, and really understanding that your intentions are where the quantum field comes into the whole picture. And so Healing House. It was featured last year in the Los Angeles Times. I had it up in Beverly Hills last year, and Kelly Noonan Gores from the Heal documentary came and spoke last year, and she's going to be speaking at the event in January as well. So she talks about energy and how important that is with our health and, with disease, what you're thinking about and what you're doing in your life, and, kind of how to put it all together, and why the art matters, and why, going to events like this really are something that we should be doing more of for ourselves and for the world.
For the world, exactly. I love that. And I think it's so important to understand that chronic disease, getting healthy, going on a spiritual journey, becoming who, is the most authentic version of yourself really has to encompass all of these different things. You can't, I have a belief, how I was trained is, we have been conditioned to movement and diets is the way that you get healthy, but that's very far from the truth. You have the whole primary side, which you mentioned, which is, spirituality. It's your education, it's your career, it's your home life, it's your relationships. It's made up of all of these things. And if you don't have those balanced, it doesn't really matter what you eat because you're still going to be in a very unhealthy mind state. And so we've got to kind of, have the primary and the secondary stuff going on at the same time. And this definitely serves the primary part of healing and health. And I love it. I love that you're doing this. I'm definitely going to, watch that documentary, but also look into the January one because August 17th is too soon and we're with children, but I'll definitely look into the January one. So if you're listening, these are two specific things, events that you could go to learn, but also, just remember following Britt and her content to get started will help you to see where else she's going to be and what other things she's doing and feel what feels right for you at the time, that you start viewing these things. Cause I think that helps us to figure out what that next step, what that 1% shift would be for ourselves. Thank you for telling us about those things. I will drop all of Britt's information into the show notes so that you guys can definitely find her. And before we end, I always ask all my guests for 3 non-negotiables that you've created for yourself that helps you to live the healthy lifestyle that you're trying to create.
Yeah. I mean, okay. So water,
Love it.
And water is very important. Maybe have a little Celtic salt or Himalayan sea salt so that you absorb it and get it else. Yoga, obviously, is just, I think it's funny. I just am preaching yoga constantly because of the shifts and things that I feel in myself. And then also breath work and meditation. I think those kind of go together. Yeah, those are
Yeah.
non-negotiables for me, for sure.
That's awesome. I love them. The yoga, breath work, I do them, but I haven't been as committed to staying as consistent as I should be. And I know that just from how I feel when I get on my yoga mat. And so this has just been a great reminder to me that I have the power to change that. And so it is something I'm going to be intentional about this coming week.
Another thing I wanted to mention just really
Yeah,
quickly,
absolutely.
especially for moms who are super busy, if they want to incorporate yoga into their lives, is to look for restorative yoga class
I
because
love, yeah.
there's obviously vinyasa where you're doing all the poses, but restorative is really good for moms, especially if you're stressed and the cortisol is kind of, it's just take that time to just let your body relax and just, it's a very relaxing experience. I think it'd be really good for any moms.
And if you're a mom and you are busy and you can't get to a studio, I rave about Peloton all the time. I know
Yeah.
there's probably things on, but I mean, Peloton's like $12.99 a month, and they have all different types of yoga along with tons of other things. And you don't have to have a bike to do anything except for the bike part of it. But I also want to give people permission when they are thinking about movement for their body and they're thinking about the exercise versus the movement of like cardio versus lifting versus you've got to have that yoga stretch relaxation component. That is movement for your body. So I don't want people to think that that means you're not working out that day. It means that you are actually showing love to your body that day. And I think we've got to flip that, especially in midlife. We cannot do what we did in our 20s. It just doesn't work anymore for us. For most people, I'm not going to say for everybody, but for most people, those old habits and patterns of exercise, movement, the thought philosophy just doesn't serve like it once maybe did. So I do believe, we have to switch the mindset of what movement looks like for ourselves at this age. And incorporating nourishing, soulful things is part of what's going to make us whole, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I love
I
that.
love it. I will see you guys next week. And thank you so much, Britt, for coming on. It's been delightful and I've learned so much.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
That episode had so many great takeaways. I hope you feel inspired and more empowered to make small 1% shifts on your wellness journey this week. I'd love to hear what resonated with you. If you want to leave a review, share your thoughts, and let me know how you're going to be implementing these 1% shifts into your life. And don't forget to subscribe and share this episode with another mama who could use a little wellness love. Want to stay connected? Join me on Instagram and Facebook at Live Life Balanced with Robin. Check out my website at livelifebalancedwithrobin.com for more resources and grab yourself some freebies while you're there. Until next time, I hope you find peace, love, and light by breathing, being present, and allowing for all possibilities to come your way. See y'all next week. Love to y'all.